In a small, peaceful town in early 20th century Germany, there lived a man everyone trusted, a kind old soul, a regular churchgoer, a man who handed out food to the poor and never caused trouble. His neighbors called him gentle, harmless, even generous. But behind the quiet smile of Karl Denke lurked one of the most grotesque secrets in criminal history. They thought he was just a reclusive janitor. In truth, he was a cannibal, a murderer, and possibly a butcher of over 40 people. He didn't just kill, he recorded their weights, preserved their flesh, and some believe even sold it as meat. This is our third episode of Serial Killers Who Lived a Double Life series, where we uncover the darkest secrets hidden behind the most ordinary faces. From respected doctors to trusted church leaders, you'll be shocked at how far some went to maintain their masks. You can check it out after this video. The doctor who murdered his patients. Who was Karl Denke? And how did this quiet old man fool an entire town? Münsterberg, a quiet town nestled in the German countryside, sat undisturbed by the chaos of the outside world. In the early 20th century, it was a place of tradition, modest homes, and tight-knit community life. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and no secret stayed hidden for long, or so they thought. Among the many familiar faces was Karl Denke, a man known for his quiet demeanor and gentle presence. He wasn't wealthy, nor was he particularly influential, but he was respected. People saw him as dependable. He lived alone in a small, unassuming house, wore old but tidy clothes, and rarely raised his voice. Every Sunday, he attended church without fail, sitting quietly in the back pew, nodding politely to those he passed on the way. Denke was the kind of man who offered help when someone needed it. If a neighbor was struggling, he might give them a warm meal or a place to stay for the night. When beggars passed through town, many claimed it was Denke who gave them bread or coins. Locals referred to him as Papa Denke, a sign of endearment, even if he remained somewhat of a loner. He earned money doing odd jobs, mostly janitorial or manual labor. He sold homemade suspenders and belts at the local market. No one thought much of it. He kept to himself, worked with his hands, and was polite, if not a little peculiar. To everyone around him, Karl Denke was just an old man trying to get by.
Kind, quiet,
harmless. They had no idea what he was really hiding behind those closed curtains. Karl Denke was born on August 12, 1860, in Oberkunzendorf, a village in the Prussian province of Silesia, which is now part of modern-day Poland. He was the middle child in a relatively large and deeply religious German Catholic family. His father was reportedly strict and demanding, and Karl's early years were marked by discipline and hardship. There is limited documentation about his early childhood, but some records suggest he struggled in school and may have had difficulties forming close relationships. Despite this, there were no official reports of violent or erratic behavior during his youth. As a young adult, Denke attempted to establish a stable livelihood. He initially tried to purchase a small farm but was unable to maintain it financially. The loss of the farm was a significant personal and economic blow. After that failure, he moved to the town of Münsterberg and purchased a modest house on Teichstrasse. It was there that he began taking in lodgers and performing small tasks to earn money. He sold leather goods, primarily suspenders, belts, and shoelaces, which he claimed were handmade. He also worked in various low-paying roles, including manual labor and janitorial duties. He was not married and had no children, and over time, he became more isolated from others socially. Though he was generally seen as quiet and eccentric, there were no recorded incidents that raised concern about his mental state prior to his arrest. However, in retrospect, his increasingly reclusive lifestyle and vague sources of income were seen as early signs that something was amiss. Karl Denke was known in the town of Münsterberg as a quiet, elderly man who rarely sought attention, but was always present when needed. He had a reputation as being reliable, particularly when it came to assisting others. Many neighbors recalled how he would offer help to those in need, whether it was by providing food to the poor or assisting with minor repairs for elderly townsfolk who couldn't manage themselves. He frequently gave bread or small amounts of money to beggars who passed through the area, and his actions were often described as generous, but unremarkable. Denke's willingness to lend a hand, without expecting anything in return, made him a familiar and trustworthy figure to those around him. To the townspeople, Karl Denke was viewed as harmless. He was the elderly man who lived alone, a bit eccentric perhaps, but nothing out of the ordinary. He kept a low profile, avoided controversy, and did not involve himself in the lives of others more than necessary. For many, he was simply an old man trying to make an honest living in a quiet, unremarkable way. The townsfolk had no reason to suspect the horrors he was hiding behind the closed doors of his home. To them, Karl Denke was, above all, a harmless figure, just another part of the quiet town's backdrop. In the years leading up to Karl Denke's arrest, there were few incidents that hinted at something darker, but they were either dismissed or overlooked by authorities. One of the earliest signs of something amiss was the strange disappearances of a few individuals in the area. As people vanished, there were murmurs of suspicion, but none of these cases were directly linked to Denke at the time. The town had always been a place where people came and went, and it wasn't uncommon for itinerant workers or travelers to disappear without a trace. The first disappearance that raised any eyebrows was that of a young man in his 20s who had been lodging with Denke for a short period. According to reports, the young man had vanished without a word, leaving behind his belongings, including some money he had earned from work. Though Denke was questioned, he insisted the man had left on his own accord and was never seen again. No further investigation was pursued, as it was assumed the man had simply moved on. Similarly, there were instances of beggars and transient workers who would stop in Münsterberg, only to later disappear. Locals didn't think much of it. Travelers often came and went through the town. Some of them, it was said, had simply passed on or continued their journeys, but the pattern began to emerge over time. Despite these scattered clues, no one made the connection between Denke and the growing number of disappearances. To the people of Münsterberg, these were just coincidences. After all, the kind, elderly man who attended church every Sunday and helped the poor didn't seem like the type to be involved in anything sinister. It wasn't until much later that the true extent of Denke's hidden life would come to light, and even then, the clues were only seen in hindsight. In 1924, Karl Denke's dark secret was finally exposed, not through the careful work of authorities or investigations, but by the actions of one fortunate man who managed to escape Denke's grasp. On December 21, 1924, Karl Denke lured a homeless man named Vincenz Olivier into his home. Denke had promised him 20 pfennig in exchange for writing a letter. A local townswoman had directed Olivier to Denke, since Denke was known in the community for his charitable nature. Olivier later recounted that after being given pen and paper, he sat down at a desk to begin writing. Denke began dictating the letter, starting with a line, "Adolf, du fetter wanst," which translates to "Adolf, you fat slob." Olivier turned around, confused by the message, and saw Denke raising a pickaxe, preparing to strike him. Olivier managed to duck in time, but he was still struck in the temple, sustaining a deep gash about 8 centimeters long and 2 centimeters wide. A struggle followed, during which Olivier was able to wrestle the weapon away from Denke and escape through the front door. He ran into the street, shouting that a madman had tried to kill him, which drew the attention of neighbors. They notified the authorities. At first, Olivier's account was dismissed. Because of Denke's reputation in the community as a kind and generous man, the police did not believe the accusation. Instead, Olivier was arrested for vagrancy and panhandling. However, the judge on the case insisted on further investigation. As a result, Denke was brought in for questioning. But before any interrogation could take place, Denke hanged himself in his cell just hours after being detained. The exact ligature he used is unclear. Some reports say it was a handkerchief, others say shoelaces. Following his suicide, police searched Denke's home. What they found confirmed Olivier's story and revealed a series of crimes far worse than anyone had imagined. Investigators discovered tubs filled with brine that contained human flesh, a box with human bones, and pots filled with human fat. They also found shoes, belts, suspenders, and shoelaces, items that were later confirmed to have been made from human skin. A ledger found in Denke's home listed 31 names. One of them was Olivier, the man who escaped. This confirmed at least 30 victims. However, due to the amount of human remains discovered, some estimates suggest Denke may have killed as many as 42 people or more. During the search of Karl Denke's residence, authorities documented a detailed inventory of human remains discovered on the premises. Among the findings were 16 femurs. This included 1 pair of notably strong femurs, 2 pairs of particularly thin ones, 6 complete pairs, and 2 individual left femurs. They also found 15 medium-sized pieces of long bones. 4 pairs of elbow bones were recovered, along with 7 heads of radii and 9 lower parts of radii. 8 lower parts of elbow bones were found, as well as 1 pair of upper shin bones. There was also a pair of lower elbows and radii with extremities that were still well connected. In addition, investigators recovered a pair of upper arms and a pair of upper arm heads. 1 pair of collarbones and 2 shoulder blades were documented. 8 heel and ankle bones were found, along with 120 toes and phalanx bones. They also discovered 65 feet and metacarpal bones. Finally, 5 first ribs were found, along with approximately 150 pieces of ribs. He began murdering homeless vagrants and poor travelers for reasons that remain unknown. His first known victim was Ida Launer, killed in 1903. In 1909, 6 years later, he murdered 25-year-old Emma Sander. At the time, another man, Edward Trotman, a slaughterhouse worker, was wrongly convicted of her murder. Trotman was imprisoned and only released in 1926 after the truth about Denke's crimes came to light. Denke's last known victim was a man named Raucus Pollock. Additionally, Denke is believed to have sold the flesh of those he killed as pickled meat, advertising it as pork. These products were sold to unsuspecting customers in nearby Breslau. The public reaction to the revelations about Karl Denke was one of utter shock and disbelief. For the residents of Münsterberg, the idea that the man they had known for years as a kind, elderly neighbor was capable of such monstrous acts was simply inconceivable. The townspeople were left questioning how someone so unassuming, so ingrained in the community, could harbor such horrifying secrets. Neighbors were horrified to learn that the man they had trusted, who had given food to the poor, helped with repairs, and attended church regularly, was responsible for such gruesome crimes. Many of them spoke out, expressing their disbelief and regret for having ever trusted Denke. Some reported that they had always found him a little odd, but nothing about his behavior had ever seemed dangerous until the shocking discovery of his crimes. The media coverage of the case, though not as extensive as modern media coverage of similar crimes, was still widespread for the time. The sensational nature of the case, an elderly, seemingly harmless man engaging in cannibalism and murder, captured the attention of both local and national newspapers. The story was picked up across Germany and beyond, with some outlets referring to Denke as the cannibal butcher of Silesia. Karl Denke's case would later be cited as an influence in the making of the 1980s horror film Motel Hell. The movie, which features a seemingly peaceful man who traps and kills victims for the purpose of turning their bodies into smoked meats, bears striking similarities to the details of Denke's crimes. Though Motel Hell is a work of fiction, it draws from the real-life horrors of figures like Denke, whose crimes were too grotesque to ignore. The case of Karl Denke served as a grim reminder of the hidden darkness that can lie beneath the surface of even the most trusted figures in a community. It continues to influence how we view those who live among us quietly unnoticed, and the dangers of assuming that appearances are always what they seem. Karl Denke's case remains one of the most disturbing examples of a man living a dual identity beneath the guise of a harmless, elderly neighbor. He concealed a dark and grotesque secret. He was able to deceive an entire community, earning their trust and even their sympathy, all while hiding his true nature. What do you think? Could you ever imagine a person like Karl Denke living among us? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on this case, and whether you think people like Denke could still be living among us today.